Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. You're joining me on the floor today, doing another photo booth episode on my laptop. That's the vibe today. Super professional. But I wanted to talk today about why do we always want what we don't have? This is just something I've been thinking about recently. That it's so common. I've had this so many times in my life where, for example, like if you're in a relationship, all you do is think about, "Ugh, I want to be single." I've had this before, not currently experiencing this, but I've also had being single and thinking like, "Ugh, I really want a relationship." And then it's like, I guarantee I'd get a relationship and be like, "Oh, being single." It's like romanticizing what we don't have. I feel like this is very common. I also notice this a lot in my life with being too routined. Because I'm someone who loves a routine. I love a structure. I live my life in a way where like I do a lot of the same shit at the same time every day. Like it serves me. I like order in my life, personal preference. But I will hit a point sometimes where I've been too routined. I've done the same shit too many times and I crave change. I don't want to be in my comfort zone. I want to do something different. Maybe I want to go travel. Like, I don't know, I get bored. And then I change into like, okay, let's do something else, or let's go somewhere, or let's like, I don't know, do like fuck up the whole routine, go crazy. And then I'm like, oh my god, all I want is like order and routine again. It's kind of like I got it out of my system and now I don't want it anymore. I've had that so many times where I'm like, I want to go travel, I want to go to this place. And as much as I love going away, I'm almost always quite keen to get back into my routine. I feel like that's quite common. Like a lot of people like, yeah, I had a great time, but like, it's great to be back in my bed. That's very me. I love going away, but I love being in my bed. I'm such a homebody. But my point is, it's so common to just crave the thing that you don't have, and then you get it, and then you crave the thing that you now don't have, that you did have before. Does that make sense? Just kind of always having like, oh, this is the thing that I need, this is the thing that I want. And I feel like there's a lot of reasons for this. I think one of them is just we romanticize what we don't have. The grass is greener. A lot of the time, I've been, for example, if I'm single and I'm looking at other people online in relationships, it's very easy to start feeling like, that's something you want, but you don't actually have all the information. You don't actually necessarily want that. It's kind of like, sometimes it's comparison fueled. I think wanting what you don't have, it's kind of like you just feel like you've been on social media too long. I've definitely had that before. That can make you feel kind of unsatisfied with what you have. But also a theory that I kind of have as to why, like, this is where my brain went when I started thinking about this, just without Googling anything, because I did Google some things as well. But when I thought about it, and I was just like, why do I think that people so often want what they don't have? Like, they have one thing that they wanted, and then they're like, they want something else. Because that, I feel like, is just human. Like, we all do that in some area. In my brain, it makes sense that maybe we do that because life never feels perfect, right? There's always something that you're not completely satisfied with. I do think we should work on, being grateful and satisfied with what we have so we're not always craving other things, but life doesn't feel perfect regardless. And I feel like sometimes that's kind of like unsettling to us, and it's kind of just us trying to like pinpoint, well, if I change this thing, then it will feel perfect. This isn't conscious, obviously, we're not thinking these things consciously. But I feel like sometimes I've had that in my life where things just feel off. Maybe I'm bored, maybe I'm annoyed about something, I don't know. And then I'm kind of just like pinpointing. It's like, people just dye their hair when they like are bored. Or they're just like, oh fuck, I need like to reset, I'm gonna get a tattoo or something. It's kind of like that mindset of like, it's not necessarily that like that's gonna help, but it's like our brain needs something to cling on to be like, things feel weird, I can't really tell what's wrong. And often nothing's wrong. It's just like life sometimes feels stagnant and boring. Like, that's just life. And then we kind of set our heart on like, well, if this thing changes, then my life will be like exciting and like better, and like we kind of just cling on to it. Because I also think it gives us a sense of control. For example, if you're like single and you're bored, you don't necessarily have to be bored if you're single. That was a bad example. Like, being single can be great. But say you're single and you're bored, not super satisfied with your life, if you think in your head and convince yourself that like it's because you're not in a relationship, and a relationship would really like be the cherry on the cake or the icing on the cake or whatever in your life, then you feel a little bit more like, okay, well, I know what it is. I know why I'm bored, and I can kind of like pick this narrative, stick to it, and then like obsess over this is the missing piece in my life. Does this make any sense? Whereas if we kind of don't pick a thing to change, we feel a bit freaked out and a bit like, oh, is this just life? Does this make any fucking sense? When we're a bit unsatisfied or bored with our lives, we just kind of pick a random thing sometimes and are like, this would make me satisfied and this would, change everything. When in reality, it wouldn't, because this is the point. Say then you do get in a relationship, there's something else. There's always something else that you're like, this is the next puzzle piece. Like, then it will be complete. When in reality, that's life, is it not? There's always going to be things that, you could change or you could alter that you think could be interesting or could feel better or could be more fun, whatever. But that is a never-ending loop. And that was kind of my brain's, like I said, first kind of, I reckon that's a lot of where it comes from. It's just like we feel weird and bored and we're just kind of like, and then we make decisions. Like, that's the thing. It's like sometimes with that, the best thing to do probably is just dye your hair. Not make a like super life-altering decision. But I feel like sometimes people do make big decisions. Like, for example, convince themselves that they're not happy in their relationship and that they need to be single when it's nothing to do with their relationship, But I did some Googling, as I always do. I'm always Googling. And I wanted to look at some of the like general consensus of why this happens. But also, like, is there an actual reason? Is there a scientific reason? Because sometimes there is. And this quote by Eckhart Tolle came up that I was like, that is very interesting. That said, there are two ways to be unhappy in this life. Not getting what you want is the first, and getting what you want is the other. Which is kind of what I mean, that like, whether you have what you think you want or you don't, it's kind of your mindset, right? It all comes back to your perspective and your mindset. My hair is pissing me off, so I'm going to put it up. 1 second. So that I found interesting because it does kind of solidify that point of like, even if there's something that you think you really want that will change your life, I just need to get in a relationship. I just need to move towns. I just need to get a new job. There's always going to be another thing that like you just need to do before you're satisfied. And that's never going to change. If you have that mindset, you're going to be stuck on that loop forever, right? But like I said, I Googled for some consensus of what people think. So it's like, why as humans are we constantly trying to like find the next thing to make us happy? Why are we not just satisfied? Why do we always want what we don't have or what we can't have? That's another thing. We often crave something that we can't have, but that's a whole other conversation. But one of the main, answers to this, which we would guess, is just the grass is greener mindset. We idealize and we romanticize the things we don't have because we don't see the full picture. We don't really know all the information and facts. So it's very easy to romanticize it and think it would be perfect. Like, for example, getting a new job. It's easy to think, wow, that would change everything. I'd be like so happy. Everything would fall into place then. But you kind of don't know that. Do you know what I mean? It's easy to romanticize stuff when we don't really know, and it said somewhere, I don't know where I got this from, it's the same way nostalgia works. You remember all the positive stuff while downplaying and forgetting all the negatives. I think that's something that we do. We fixate on something that we think is gonna, round our life off perfectly. Suddenly everything will fall into balance when this thing changes or happens or ends, whatever. We romanticize it. We have it on this pedestal. We're not being realistic. Oh my God, I've got somewhere in my notes here. I read this really cool study. Where is it? Okay. So this is one of the theories. It's called the hedonic treadmill. I got this from positivepsychology.com. So this phenomenon suggests that despite experiencing positive events or acquiring desirable possessions, our happiness levels tend to return to a stable baseline over time. People often remark on how quickly the extraordinary becomes commonplace. We are highly adaptive creatures. The predictable becomes, by definition, background, leaving the attention uncluttered, all the better to deal with the random or unexpected. A quote from Ian McEwan, which I've always found interesting. The fact that we adapt to, and we like acclimatize to our life and our surroundings. Even if you had like the biggest, most expensive house and most expensive cars and so much fucking money, the novelty will wear off. No matter what you have, it will become commonplace and it will become, like it says in this quote, background to you after a point, because that's how humans are designed. We're designed to acclimatize to our surroundings like it says in here, to leave your attention uncluttered so that you adapt to what's going on around you. It's not taking up all your brain space, it becomes background. And then you have brain space to think about unexpected things or new things that like are coming across your desk in your life that you have to deal with. You know, we wouldn't be able to function if we still were like so out of place and everything was so novel all the time. We're built to acclimatize to whatever we have. And that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It can make you ungrateful, obviously. It can make you take things for granted a lot. You know, if you have a really nice house or something and you would just get used to it, you do have to intentionally be grateful and remind yourself of like, oh my God, this is actually really cool. I'm really lucky, you know. Otherwise, yeah, it can be a bad thing. However, it does serve like a biological purpose, you know, that it leaves us with the energy and the focus and the brain space to focus on new things. According to the hedonic treadmill theory, we adapt to both positive or negative life events, and our happiness levels eventually return to our initial set point. So whether great things are happening or horrible things are happening, slowly you kind of get back to your baseline happiness, which I find so interesting. Brickman and Campbell studied a group of lottery winners and a group of people who experienced terrible accidents with life-changing events. In their 1971 study, their finding was that the lottery winners and accident victims both returned to their pre-event happiness levels within a few months or years. Isn't that interesting? And that's kind of what I mean. I think because we're designed to acclimatize and to get used to what happens in our life. For example, you win the lottery. You get used to it. You know, you might think you never would, but you would. You go through a horrific life-changing event. You know, you're acclimatized to that being your life after some time. And I think that kind of idea is very linked to why do we always want what we can't have, right? Why are we always kind of unsatisfied? And it's because we're built to be unsatisfied, right? We're built to get used to what we have and to desire more. And that's also a biological, you know, it has a biological purpose, because if we didn't have that drive and we didn't acclimatize to what's going around us, we would die, right? No, we have to wake up with desire and cravings. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's inward or outward, we need some sort of like a gleam or a dream in our life, right? What the fuck is that a phrase? Who knows? It is now. But this is the thing, it's kind of a double-edged sword of like, it can make you unsatisfied all the time. It can leave you kind of getting the things that you once wanted and not even realizing because you're too busy focusing on this next thing you want, which is a very common kind of human condition. We're always kind of focused on the next thing and we struggle to like stop and smell the roses and actually appreciate what we have. You know, there is this sense of like, what's next? You know, we're always desiring something else. That can, like I said, it can make you ungrateful. It can make you not notice what you have, but it's also necessary because it keeps you going. Like having a fire under your ass has a biological purpose, you know, as much as it can be kind of like shit. It is your body just like, you're staying alive, you're like craving things, you're wanting change. And I think that's kind of how humans are designed, right? But it is a double-edged sword because if we had like perpetual contentment, right, we were just always content with what we had, we wouldn't survive. You know, that would massively threaten our survival as a human being. You know, and the fact that things become less novel to us and they kind of lose their like shine after a while is kind of like our body and our mind's way of being like, go get a better thing, you know, keep moving, keep improving, keep trying new things. Like that's what we like. We like to problem solve and we like challenges and we like to be busy, and you know, it does serve us in that way. It really made me laugh when I was researching this. I actually wrote it down. Someone put, I think it was on Reddit, of course, someone put, the answer is because the human brain is such a joke. It wants what it wants what it can't have, and when it has it, it doesn't want it. The human brain is such a joke. I just saw that and laughed. I was like, it fucking is. Like the amount of things that our brain does that are so illogical. They're logical, but they're so logical. Do you know what I mean? Like everything has a purpose, but also like the human brain does stupid shit. Like it's so smart but so stupid. And this is kind of an example. You know, our brain is trying to keep us alive and look after us and keep us desiring new and better things all the time. But the problem is sometimes you're not actually, you know, unhappy in a certain area. Like I was saying at the start, it's kind of just your brain like disguising it. Like you might feel a bit bored and then it's like, oh, like maybe you should break up with your boyfriend and like go fuck off to Greece or something, and it's like, that's probably not going to solve your problem. Like, being able to actually identify what would help you rather than pinpointing random shit in your life and blaming that, because I think that's very normal and common, when we're frustrated with stuff or bored with stuff, to be like, oh, it's because of this, and we just pick a random thing in our life and like blame that. But sometimes it's like, it's just life, and you don't need to blow up your life every single time you're like bored. Like, it's okay. And following on with this theory about the hedonic treadmill, they also propose the hedonic adaptation prevention model, right? So what you can do to prevent getting on this kind of treadmill, right, of being like, I want the next thing and then the next thing, and then I'm not satisfied because I get used to it, and then I want something different, and then I adapt to that, and then I want something novel again, like all the time. As much as that is human, and you probably can't completely erase that mechanism in your brain, you wouldn't want to, because maybe you'd die. You don't want it to like be controlling and like dictating your life to a point where you're never actually satisfied, you're never actually grateful for what you have, and you just are making shit choices all the time. They suggested that intentional efforts to prevent adaptation can prolong the positive effects of life events, so you don't just get used to it and not care about it anymore. They said people may be able to actively prolong or enhance their happiness by preventing themselves from fully adapting to the positive event, which is interesting. Like, keeping it new, keeping it fresh, not letting it become something you take for granted and something that just turns into background, right? Because like I was saying, a lot of things will become background, and they need to, because you've got other shit to do, and you can't spend all day, for example, if you've got a new car, all day, every day, like fucking flapping about how excited you are about your new car. Like, at a point, you need to like drive to work and fucking get on with your life. Do you know what I mean? You can still appreciate it, but if it's taking up, like, the excitement is like, oh my god, I can't wait, then you would never get anything done. Like, we do need to fucking get used to stuff and think about other things. But keeping it fresh, and not letting it become something you don't even notice that's adding to your life. And they proposed activities such as expressing gratitude, practicing kindness, setting and pursuing meaningful goals. They can all lead to sustained increases in happiness. They also said, which I think is interesting, when people engage in different activities, they are less likely to habituate to any single one. So to keep variety in your life, right? Not become too routine, which is kind of what I was saying at the start, that I'm someone who loves routine, and I really find it stressful when there isn't a routine in my life. Like, for example, like, I do the same thing every Monday. I do the same thing every Tuesday. It's different from the Monday, but it's like my Tuesday. Do you know what I mean? I do the same thing on like a Wednesday. Like, I don't do the exact same thing, but like there is a general structure to my weeks that I don't like to change because it works. But there is a line where if you don't have any variety, even I, homebody who likes to do the same shit all the time, will crave novelty and will want to blow it up and do something completely different. And that's because I've taken it too far, right? That tends to not happen, because even though I am pretty routine, I do have variety. I factor in the variety, if you know what I mean. But keeping it in that kind of sweet spot of like, you might not be like me and like love routine as much. I think generally people do enjoy routine, but like keeping it in that sweet spot where it's routine enough that it's not like taking over all your brain power all the time and you can get shit done, but it's also like novel enough that you're still enjoying it. That balance will be different for everyone, But for me, there is like a certain point where if I am doing the same shit for too long without that, I know when I'm hitting that point because I feel it. Do you know what I mean? That like knowing oneself, I guess, is like a good way to stop yourself, like it says, habituating to one single thing. Keeping a little bit of novelty, but not so much that you're like unsettled all the time. I don't think people like constant novelty. It's exhausting. I also think like when I think about it, sometimes I think it's a social comparison thing of like, especially with social media, it can be easy to look around and kind of see half the picture, of someone's relationship, someone's traveling, someone's job, someone's life, whatever. We see like not even half the picture. And it's easy to then romanticize that because, like I said, if you don't have that much information on something, it's so easy to fucking like paint it as something really perfect, as we all know, stale topic. But I think social media and social comparison doesn't help because we get jealous sometimes of things that like we don't necessarily know enough to know if we should be jealous of that. We might not even want it. But it's like we become jealous and we start romanticizing it and start getting all like, oh, I need this and I need that and that would make me feel good, and oh, like I envy this person's life or this person's relationship or whatever the fuck they're doing, and maybe it's their style or like whatever. We just think like, oh, that's something I want, that's something that I want to do more of this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like that I think can breed that like dissatisfaction as well. But I think that's also like to an extent got a purpose, looking around at peers and other people, and that sometimes being a fire under your ass is not always the worst thing. I made a whole episode months ago called Using Jealousy as Fuel, I believe, saying that like I don't always think jealousy is like always a super negative thing. I think sometimes when you're jealous of something, it's like an arrow pointing at something that like you want to do with your life. Something that you like and that you're jealous of. Sometimes it's just like, oh, that's information. Like if someone, I don't know, you follow someone on Instagram and they like live with a group of like their best friends or something, and you're like, fuck, that'd be so good. Maybe it's just an idea. Maybe you should do that too. It's not necessarily like the jealousy isn't giving you any, like being helpful. It's kind of telling you what you want, because you wouldn't be jealous of something that you didn't want. So I don't necessarily think the social comparison element is bad. I just think it's probably true. That we look around at other people and sometimes get jealous and romanticize certain things, and that can make us feel like we want something else or that we're not satisfied with what we have. Again, there's a line though, because some people don't like put enough thought into it, and they'll just kind of, like I said, make big stupid life choices about a vague idea of something that they don't really know about. Does that make sense? Like you might see someone's relationship and be like, oh my god, that looks so perfect, mine's not like that, blah blah, and then like spiral yourself into like a deep hole of like, okay, I need to end my relationship. But it's like, you don't fucking know you don't know what they're like. It's kind of like being able to take it with a grain of salt is like actually my fucking catchphrase. I feel like I say that all the time, but I do think it's really important to be able to take things, especially like social media and what other people do in their personal lives, when you don't fucking know, being able to take it with a grain of salt and realize that you don't fucking know. And it's kind of hard to compare your life with a life that you don't really know. A little bit of jealousy sometimes is a good thing, I think. Sometimes it's good for your personal growth. It tells you what direction maybe you should go in with your life, what you'd enjoy. But in conclusion, I think there's a lot of different factors and a lot of different reasons for the fact that we so often get something that we wanted and then feel unsatisfied shortly after and crave something else. I think that's human. I think it can be beneficial and healthy and keep you growing and trying things, However, I do think it's important to, like I said, intentionally be grateful for what you do have, so that it's not making you like ungrateful as a person. Sometimes keeping the comparison to other people to a minimum, like sometimes is not helpful if that's like taking over, and it's like all the time constant comparison, like that's a bit much. And also I guess filling the void yourself. I think sometimes, like I said, life can just feel a bit stagnant or a bit boring or whatever, and I guess learning to fill the void, if you're not satisfied with something in your life, sometimes a lot of the time it's like I said, a mindset or like something that you're imagining that you're lacking this thing, you're imagining that you're like deficient of something in your life, and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you just have a bad mindset, and sometimes you just need to fill the fucking void, be more grateful, appreciate what you have, and twist the narrative to something a bit more beneficial, rather than going around thinking, I don't have enough of this isn't good enough, I need more of that, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to help you. That's not a helpful mindset to have all the time. It's good to have some sort of a fire under your ass, like I said, some sort of a desire for better and more and growth is great. You don't want to get rid of that completely, but you also don't want it to fucking like dictate everything you do, because like it is a treadmill that you will get stuck on, But yeah, let me know your thoughts about like, have you experienced this, and like are you someone who just goes with it, in sense of like, if you feel a bit bored or like you want something else all the time, do you just kind of follow that craving of like, I want this thing different, I want to go travel, I want to get a new job, blah, blah, blah. Do you just do them? Because that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you're not hurting people. Or are you more on the side of like kind of training your brain to be grateful for what it has and not, bite every time your brain's like, let's do this differently, let's dye our hair, let's get a tattoo, you know? But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me on the floor, and I will talk to you again soon.